لسه مشكلة موجودة. كل حاجة بتفصل لما بتجيش بالبرامج.
Morning, everybody. Good morning. Our apologies because of rain. Yeah, please be have seated. You sit. In spite of the heavy rain. Very good. Very good.
And we start straight away because of time. Honorable Denga, Acting Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Honorable Undersecretary, members of Diplomatic Corps.
Now, this briefing, we are doing it, but very much conscious that our foreign policy of the Republic of South Sudan and the Constitutive Act of the African Union guide us that we should not much talk about the internal affairs of the other country. But it is crucial for us to be able to do this because we are the most, like the rest of the countries that are neighboring Sudan, we are the most closest neighbor. So we have to do this on this particular account. Briefing to the diplomatic community on the GATT initiative. Excellencies, Head of Diplomatic Mission, the UN agencies and international organizations accredited to the Republic of South Sudan, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming over for this briefing, which comes at a very difficult time for our region. Since the outbreak of hostilities in the Sudan, South Sudan, along with other countries in the region, was alarmed. I'm sure your own countries were also alarmed. Given your diplomatic presence in the Sudan, most of your embassies, I'm very sure they are and they were in the Sudan. Because of those grave concerns, the GATT countries confer on the situation and conceive what you may have had in the media over the last 48 hours at the GATT initiative. I would like to talk to you about 5 points with respect to this. One is the origin of the initiative itself. This initiative dates back to April 17, 2023, when the GATT Assembly of Heads of States and Government delegated President Salva Kiir Mayardit, President of the Republic of South Sudan, and his Kenyan and Djiboutian counterpart to consult with the Sudanese leaders on the urgency of addressing the current situation in our neighboring Sudan. In that capacity, His Excellency President Salva Kiir continued to engage with Chairman Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and I really want to say Abdel Fattah al-Burhan is the chairperson of the IGAD Assembly of Heads of State and Government. So he still maintained that capacity. And Rapid Support Forces, RSF, leader General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, during his several phone calls with the two leaders, President Salva stressed the imperative of respecting the 72 hours ceasefire that was reportedly broken by himself, His Excellency President Salva, on the 15th and 16 and 17, he stressed on the issue of ceasefire to the two leaders, and he spoke to them directly that ceasefire, cessation of hostilities, let the humanitarian access without being hindered. And so he himself, His Excellency the President, have brokered this ceasefire. But later on, the American and Saudis ceasefire followed, which elapsed yesterday. And as violations of that truth were widely reported, President Salva Kiir Mayardit again reminded them of their solemn responsibility of allowing foreign diplomat mission to evacuate their diplomatic staff and national, as well as allowing safe humanitarian corridors. Number 2, current status of the initiative. On Tuesday, 25th April 2023, President Al-Burhan, in a call with President Salva Kiir Mayardit, gave his initial acceptance of the initiative. We are yet, and of course, we have also sent a similar written request both to His Excellency Burhan and also to the leader of RSF, written one, we have sent to them both. Of course, last night we have heard the RSF have responded in accepting the ceasefire. We hope that this particular ceasefire will have more meaning and will have an impact on the life of the Sudanese people, both who are in Khartoum and those who are outside. And then the attention will shift, particularly from today. We were hoping and we are hoping that the attention will shift to how to get, the face-to-face talk, because war cannot be won in the battlefield. Of course, this is always an objective of war. One side must defeat the other side. Sometimes it is not the case. It takes life, it takes time. So our hope that this particular period of 72 hours or beyond could be used as a way to resume to the table of talk, so that issues, root causes to join in, and whether inside Sudan, of course it is quite challenging because Khartoum International Airport is inaccessible. Other towns in Sudan are accessible, but also it depends on both parties to agree on those locations. Or outside Sudan, in the region, and South Sudan included, but again that depends on the choice of the two leaders, because venue cannot be imposed on warring parties. We have experienced as South Sudan in our own situation. During a war in 1994 up to 2005, there were a lot of forums. Forums in Addis Ababa, in Egypt, in Libya, in Abuja, but eventually the eventual forum became Nairobi until we signed a comprehensive peace agreement in 2005. In 2013, we got ourselves into the same problem, and again there were a number of forums that were avenues that were discussed, but the final one was Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. From 2014 up to 2018, when the revitalized agreement, the resolution of conflict in the Republic of South Sudan was signed on September 12, 2018. So the issue of venue, we are very much flexible this particular initiative. The third point is concerned on spillover. The third point is the spillover. The current situation in the Sudan is very dangerous, with each side now reinforcing themselves. The scale of violence will increase and destruction to lives and properties will be enormous. Of course, we are still maintaining our embassy in Khartoum. For obvious reasons, we cannot abandon Sudan. We were part of Sudan up to 2011. We have very long historical ties. So even if Sudanese have a difficulty, we cannot leave them alone. We'll have to maintain, and this is what the President and the National Security Council have directed the Foreign Ministry to maintain our embassy in Sudan. Of course, it is quite difficult. I have talked to them. And most of diplomatic missions, most of them have left. There are very few that are still in Khartoum. But this shows our solidarity, our being very concerned. This is why our embassy continue to be in Khartoum. So it is strategic importance. Sudan is a vast country and is strategically positioned. Its internal conflict should not be allowed to degenerate into a regional problem. It is because of such concern that any concerted effort, regional or international effort, to settle are welcome. But really, as South Sudan and IGAD, our experience have shown that internationalizing a conflict, regionalizing a conflict, will complicate matters. So our position is that Sudanese are capable of resolving their problem. It is always obvious, even ourselves here, when we had our internal crisis, it is always hard in the first months, the second months, for people to talk. But it is always, a prerequisite for sustainable peace, for parties to be able to sit. So our position is that we encourage the leaders of the current situation in Sudan, the political forces, and the Sudanese people to sit by themselves. Anybody that will come will just facilitate, but not to fuel the conflict that is in the Sudan. The spillover effects are already visible. Thousands of people have arrived to the neighboring countries, South Sudan included, with both returnees and other categories, refugees or other nationals. They are in three categories of these people who have left Sudan, at least from our side, South Sudan. We have South Sudanese returnees, and I must admit that there are South Sudanese, even after the independence, they stay in Khartoum. And the government of Sudan previously did not ask anything from them. They said you can continue to stay as before. There were no any requirements of residence, of permits. The government allowed them to stay. So we have over 2.4 or 6 million South Sudanese, not only in Khartoum, but across Sudan. We have South Sudanese who own properties because from 1940s, 1930s, there are people who have properties in the north. So those particular people have not decided to come. And they make part of the huge population that have not come. We have laborers, those who have gone to work in most of the companies. They are very large numbers. And these are people that are really facing a lot of problems because they don't have saving, they don't have anything, they were just working and earn their living from hand to mouth. These are a very large group. They live in the suburb of Khartoum, either in Bahri, Hayusif, Mdurman, and other places. It is our concern, and this is why, one of the reasons why the embassy cannot be closed in the Sudan. The second category are Sudanese refugees. Of course, South Sudan would not want to use the word refugee, as before they have also not used on us. But international standard required that a person crossing the border to the other side because of the persecution or because of any other thing, that particular individual or group can be labeled as refugees. So we have this group, Sudanese refugees, and we have other nationalities. So far, we have received quite a huge number of the other nationalities that have crossed to South Sudan. And I really want to thank the embassies here, the Embassy of Kenya, the Embassy of Somalia, and the Embassy of Uganda, and the other embassies that have received their nationals. They have, our airspace is open, and their nationals were picked from Paloj. Up to yesterday, I had a conversation with two ambassadors, Ambassador of Somalia and Ambassador of Kenya. Ambassador of Kenya have reported that there are 95 Kenyan nationals, a new one, who are coming. And there are 73 and 30 Somalis, that is up to 103, of which part of them were transported yesterday to Juba. We have still a quite number of other nationals, and I've reported to Charge d'Affaires Affairs of Canada. I don't know whether he has come. There is a Canadian national that have run without even passport or ID. We wanted the Embassy of Canada to be able to help so that they can evacuate them to their next destination. Because of this influx, South Sudan has made an appeal through the Ministry of Humanitarian and Disaster Management to assess the needs of those refugees in conjunction with the UN agencies. I really want to thank the United Nations, particularly Mr. Peter is there, the acting coordinator. He has been very on top of this with UNHCR, IOM, and all the other UN agencies, including those who are based in Maban. They have extremely discharged their duties. I really want to thank on behalf of the government, and of course you have been talking with the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs. Of course we have South Sudanese patriotic citizens who have come out to give support. They have sent plane to pick citizens in Paluch. Of course, we got it very challenging because transporting 10,000 by plane is not visible. So there is a discussion of using steamers, and I hope if there's somebody from UNMIS in this briefing, it will really be good. This is one area that we want to explore so that a large number can be transported using river steamers. We are also discussing not bringing everybody to Juba, but they should be directed to the state where they're supposed to go. Those who are from Barikzal, for example, are wheeled and they have not crossed from, we have about 12 crossing points from the east to the west, 12 crossing points. And all these 12 crossing points are very active. South Sudanese are returning through them at the rate of 500 per day. So it is a very huge undertaking. So there is a discussion on how to screen and direct those who are going to Bentiu should not come to Juba. Those who are going to lakes should not come to Juba, or Werab should be directed if they have come to Rang. It is only those who are coming to Equatoria, particularly Eastern Equatoria, Central Equatoria, and Western Equatoria, probably Jamule could, and Pibora administrative area could be allowed to move. But those who have crossed from the other side to the other crossing points, Iruweng, in Unity State, in Abyei and Werab, and Northern Bargazal and Western Bargazal could also, similar screening can be done so that if there are citizens from this side can be flown or they can be given trucks. And therefore we want to thank Ambassador of Sudan in spite of all these difficult challenges. The system is still operating at the border with Jordan, and they are helping those who are crossing. And so, Ambassador, I really want to thank you on that. This is we know it is a very difficult time, but we really want to acknowledge that support from the government of Sudan. The fourth area of this briefing is humanitarian needs and interventions. There is currently an enormous influx of thousands of returnees and refugees into South Sudan, thereby multiplying humanitarian needs. Sincerely speaking, the number is still being worked on, and but the number should be over 10,000 who have crossed to South Sudan, both returnees and refugees and other nationalities. Our worry is that what happened if the war continues. We have very large border, although the states in the Sudan, the state bordering South Sudan are quite a bit stable. We hope that stability continue from White Nile, going to South Kordofan, as you extremely move to South Darfur and other places, are quite a bit stable. So we hope the crossing will not be so huge. But in the event that the crossing increase, then that will be a big issue of concern. The 5 points, which is my final point, is the status of the implementation of the RCs. It is important not to lose focus as a country. We have a duty, we have a responsibility to implement the revitalized agreement. While engaged on the Sudan issue, South Sudan has not lost focus on its own problems, notably the implementation of RCs. Despite the challenges, we will continue to meet the requisite milestones of the agreement. I know you have been following, we have a roadmap, which we want to thank all our ambassadors here on the support that they are giving. And also, United Nations mission in South Sudan is engaged with the government on issues of constitutional making process and issues related to elections. We have a joint task force for us to be able to focus on those parts, the constitutional making process and the elections. In that case, we have to talk about the reconstitution of political parties and the reconstitution of the reconstituted election commission. So the government have not lost focus on this. We are determined that we meet deadlines that we give to ourselves. Of course, there are other things, popularization of roadmap, issues of truth and national reconciliation and healing. We have also a focus on them, and the Minister of Justice is working on that line. So, leading to the conduct of free and fair elections, our hope is that all these efforts will culminate into the elections by the end of the transitional period or the roadmap. Finally, South Sudan welcome any effort. RSF last night have responded on what they call tripartite recall, that is the African Union, the GATT, and the UN, and also the Quact approach the US, the Saudi, the UAE, and other countries. So we welcome, and I really want to thank the American ambassador here in Juba. He has been in touch with us to facilitate our coordination and communication with Washington. I equally want to thank both ambassadors, the EU, the Troika ambassadors, all the other ambassadors that are accredited to South Sudan, the Chinese, South African, all of you, really, on your update on daily basis. And our brothers from Egypt, as I reported to you last time, His Excellency the President had a conversation with his counterpart, Abdel Fattah Sisi, because we are the most Eritrea on the east, Ethiopia on the east, but extremely on the north, you have Sudan, you have Egypt, but in the west you have Libya and you have Chad. Encourage all the ambassadors, whenever that you have something to share with us, our offices are opened, because your capital will really require us to be able to share any new development, and this is what I'm doing to give this briefing so that we are on the same page. If you have anything, even if Saturday or Sunday, we can come to the office, let us know so that we can have the same conversation. Ambassador of Kenya, Ambassador of Djibouti, we are the lead on this particular process, so that and then the Secretariat of IGAD If there's anything that we can always discuss, our office is open so that we can build the momentum. Of course, there is no any really worried about the process. RSF and SAF, what is crucial is that they have agreed for 72 hours. That's the most important. Who have called it is not necessary really. But the most important is that they should respect the ceasefire, and this is our message. We had our president have a direct engagement with President Burhan. He has also direct contact not only with Himeti but with his people. And the document was sent to Himeti and the document was sent to President Burhan. So the spirit would be having ceasefire for 72 hours. What do we do? Within this or after this? This is a conversation that we want to build, and we need to build consensus so that we don't have several initiatives who are not aiming at one goal. Our position as IGAD is that IGAD have experience, and IGAD before this have done such kind of talk, but you always rely on international partners. We know it during a comprehensive peace agreement. US was prominent, EU, and they call them friends of IGAD. At that time, even now they have friends of IGAD. So nobody is chasing anybody, but we have to coordinate. That's the mechanism that we need to see. And I really want to ask IGAD, the Secretariat of IGAD, to be able to give us a guide on that, so that all this effort, whether by the African Union or the US, Saudi, UAE, should also focus on the solution of the situation in the Sudan. And we have also to be cautious so that we are not seen taking side. It always complicates any initiative, any peace deal. We must maintain neutrality so that the Sudanese people can benefit from any initiative that we are doing. The people who are suffering now is not soldiers. Yes, soldiers are dying. But the most people who are suffering are Sudanese people. Whether it is loss of life, loss of opportunities, their banks are not working, hospitals are not working. These are people also who are suffering. So our focus should be real balanced for us to be able to achieve this particular peace agreement. Legitimately, President Burhan is still the chair of head of states and government of IGAD, and all the contacts that we are doing in that line. Personally, I maintain contact with my counterpart, the acting Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sudan, in spite of difficulty that is in. I've been talking to him. Even yesterday, I told him about this briefing, that I will be having a briefing, and we are discussing not only your affairs, but as people who are concerned and want to share some initiative with us here, so that we are in the same page. I think this is what I want to communicate. If there is any questions, then I will be able to receive questions. But this is basically the message that we want to communicate to you, and I really want to thank you for having come, even in spite of rain. You left your function and you have come to join us. Thank you very much.